So today we've actually got a case study, which is quite exciting. But I need to start, before we do some intros, by asking a quick question. So round the room, how many of you actually run any type of share plan? So that might be what we call a share save, which is where participants are saving every month into a plan for perhaps 3 or for 5 years, or it might be an executive plan, or any other type of share plan. Can I just have I'm going to go old school. I'm not doing Slido. Superb. Okay, perfect. Are there any of you in the room that are thinking of putting in place a share plan at some point in the future? Perfect. Brilliant. Okay, so actually I think, panel, we've got quite a wide range in terms of experience in the audience. So hopefully this is going to help with the session. And even for some of you that are not currently offering share plans, what I'm going to try and do is keep our panel on track and make sure if we're talking about things that maybe some of you who don't offer share plans actually understand a little bit more about how these particular plans work. But what we're going to do as a panel is discuss a fantastic case study. And I think at these type of events, and we work in partnership with REBA, we do the research, which hopefully you'll have all got the research, the recent research from REBA, which shows that, for example, workplace ISAs are looking to double in the next couple of years. I think that we would all agree that we've seen from the research that, people aren't saving enough, whether that's for their retirement or whether it's just for bumps along the road that kind of happen where people need, money, say the car breaks down or the washing machine packs in, that kind of thing. And I won't go into a whole load of stats because I want to delve straight into this particular case study where Sage have what we would perhaps all know as a share save, but they've called it the Sage Save and Share Plan. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Jules from Sage just to do a little bit of an intro, and my other panel here today. And I'm Sarah Long from Wealth at Work. So thank you very much for joining this morning.
Hi, good morning everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. My name's Jules, I'm Jules Shepherd, I'm from the Sage Group. I am the Share Plan Director and I've been with them for, nearly 9 years now. Share Plan Director, I sit as part of the reward team. We're a global technology company specialising in accounting software for SMBs.
I was going to ask you more questions, but I'll save those. Hi, everybody. My name's Jane Darlington. I head up a team called Stitch. We are Deloitte's employee communication specialists, working with organisations to help communicate reward and benefits for organisations around the world. We all have worked together for quite a long time, so apologies. We're trying no in jokes or anything, I suppose. No. But what we're here to talk about today is about the Sage Save and Share journey, and about how obviously the change in workforce kind of demands and needs, lots of intergenerational kind of needs in the workplace, and how the colleague engagement and communication has played a key part in delivering to that objective. First off, just for a little bit of background, would you be able to just share with everybody, I'm going to use the word share again, would you be able to share with everybody a little bit of history, just very briefly, on Save and Share and the other equity programmes that you run at Sage? Because you have 12,000 employees, you're in loads of different countries, there's lots of challenges that maybe other companies will find familiar.
Yes, Sage has employees in 14, 15 countries that are eligible for our Save and Share plan. Our Save and Share plan is just a twist on the UK approved plan that you may have heard of, maybe even run in your own organisations, which is the Share Save plan. But we don't just offer this in the UK, we offer a version of it in countries that we operate in around the world. So that brings more challenges because you're complying with many countries' regulatory security laws, tax laws to actually be able to operate the plan. We've got 11,000 employees, just under 11,000 employees. So we have to communicate the plan to all of them around the world. We operate executive plans as well, what we would call discretionary plans, long-term incentive plans. They tend to go to senior management levels and levels below that from time to time for critical roles.
So, as people will know, all employee share schemes require kind of annual invitation, and the way that they operate, there are particular points in those programmes that require kind of the maturing of those programmes, which those big events drive need for communication. What was different about this particular story and this particular time here? I'm just looking at the slide there about your objectives, because you tend to be quite clear at the beginning of the year what you want to achieve.
And Jules, especially with the fact that, you know, Sage colleagues were making £5.16 profit per share, which was a huge gain, wasn't it?
Yes, absolutely. To split it into two, every year we're dealing with a new launch of the plan because we offer the plan annually every year. And we're also dealing with the maturity of a plan that was launched 3 years prior. So we have these two big main events for this plan that go on every year. The launch happens in May, the maturity happens in August. So the first thing that we do is we start planning for the launch. Now, this is now a mature plan. Our first launch happened in 2017. Overall, globally, our participation rate for the first plan was about 22, just under 23%. Steadily, year on year, we have grown that participation rate. And in 2023, it stood at 31%. Excuse me, I'm kind of bringing...
28.8.
Sorry?
28.8. Yes.
I don't agree with that, but
okay.
Fair enough.
Yes. And actually, that's the keynote this morning. We were talking about data.
Never believe the data.
Never interrogation of data.
I think maybe that perhaps what was stripped out of that was that we have a slightly separate plan in the United States, which is a local designed ESPP plan. In my head, overall participation in a global plan includes that one. So that's where I get my 31% from. So I'm sticking by it.
So far be it from me to challenge. So the key kind of things that we looked at the beginning was, to the points this morning, we looked at data. So there was two things before. You were setting your objectives and you looked at the data across your eligible populations and obviously seeing certain participation rates. And you also generated some feedback, didn't you? Survey? Is there an
Absolutely.
Survey?
Sort of like, yeah, we had two main our main objective this year was A, education, but B, we were also asked to increase participation. As I've said, our overall participation across the two plans, right, was 31%, and we were targeted to try and take it to 35%. So a reasonable target increase, basically, for a mature plan that year on year has had sort of like a steady increase and had started to plateau. So our first point was, yes, let's look at the data. And so we pulled a lot of analytics about our plan. Some of the things that we found out was that basically we had a number of low participating countries but had big employee bases like India and Spain. So we thought we wanted to do a bit of a concentration on those. We then did a full survey. Over the years, we've taken a lot of anecdotal data that has helped us refine and revamp our communication plan each year and our educational side to that. We found there were a lot of myths about the plan. And so we worked on those and provided answers. So year on year, we've done different things. But this year, we really wanted to target those low participating countries and actually understand our employees' behaviours and what they thought of the plan. So doing the survey was key. We had a good take-up. I mean, surveys tend to get you know, fairly low take-ups. We gave an incentive, some Sage merchandise, which included a very nice backpack. And so that got our survey take-up to over 10%, which I think, I don't know, reward guys, I think that's pretty good. That told us a number of things, and that helped us think about how we wanted to target our colleagues. Out of those who didn't join the plan, 46% of them told them that they didn't understand it, which was a bit disappointing because we really work hard with these guys on our communications. So we thought this has got to be about the delivery, because everything's on our microsite. It's well written, if I say so myself, and it's very intuitive. So this is more about driving them to that microsite.
Just before we move on, can I just also ask for a raise of hands in terms of who in the room has colleagues globally?
Put your microphone.
Oh, sorry. Who has kind of colleagues around the world, just so we can get a gauge? Perfect. Okay, so great audience.
So you already understand the challenges of taking something that's very UK-based and trying to put it out there around the world, okay? So you can have language issues. We do translate in a few countries. But you really need local teams on the ground to support you in the message, in the communications. We're lucky that we have great support from our internal comms teams regionally across the globe. And we're lucky that our plan is very supported by our brand team as well. And we stick to our brand colours in how we put our messages across, so that everything ties together, that it is all about Sage.
And obviously what we do when we're putting the communication plan together is work then with all of those teams, isn't it? Making sure we've got a very clear plan against those objectives. You guys will all be familiar with that, but what are the specific objectives we're trying to achieve? And for this particular thing, which is interesting for everybody here, was around around reaching those employees and those groups that we wanted to actually get to, and really start dispelling some of those myths, so that employees were feeling, colleagues were feeling kind of, oh yes, I understand what this means for me. And so a communication approach needs to have a mix of media. It needs to have multi-channels, as we all know. It's not just put one piece of paper out to everybody and expect them to kind of engage with it. It's about using a mix of communication channels to meet all employee kind of learning objective, learning styles and preferences. But what we really needed to do was we looked specifically at a handful of key elements within the digital communication, and that was around specific illustrations. So these kind of fun style illustrations with really attention-grabbing headlines that fit with the Sage brand and are very, very kind of bring everything all very much to life. And then we also looked at how do we bring this to life for colleagues so that they really feel that this is working for them. And we work with you on pulling together a range of employee videos. So Jules and the team went out to all of their colleagues and actually looking at some of the target audience groups, prepared some video peer-to-peer to dispel some of the myths, to explain what it means for them, and to kind of bring the programme a little bit more to life, which I'm going to play now. I say that in a slightly hesitant manner, but if you would mind clicking the "Why did you join" button, please. Tech support.
I heard about Save and Share when I was actually an apprentice. Didn't understand it very well and didn't know much about it, but heard it was a good thing. I think the money being locked in for 3 years is always kind of one of the things that probably put us off at first. But when I looked further into it, and I realised I could take it out if anything happened, if I really needed it.
I've heard about this plan with my colleague.
Okay, so there's lots and lots of video, and I'm sure that Jules and the team would be happy to share. We'll just share another one, because what we were keen to do was actually just hear specifically from Millie, who was an apprentice and was one of the key employee groups.
I heard about Save and Share when I was actually an apprentice. Didn't understand it very well.
Could you click the
and didn't
middle
know
box,
much.
please? Thank you. Wonderful.
Totally saved my financial security. I think ever since I got my first big shares, I've been so much better with my finances. It's managed to help us in so many different ways, and then this year I finally managed to secure a house with my partner.
Once I had the shares now.
There are a range of colleagues, so what the team did was actually looked at communication from peers from France, from some of the countries that you were actually trying to target and reach, and framing some of those questions. So you're controlling the message and you're controlling some of the story centrally, but you're allowing your colleagues to kind of give you that commentary and give that kind of story and really bring that to life. And I mean, Millie is a fantastic kind of superstar in that. And those peer-to-peer communications then sitting as part of a kind of wider digital experience for employees to kind of, colleagues to reach, mix of kind of animation and video, myth busting, links to really all important kind of where to go to for financial advice, or financial support guidance, sorry, that's wrong. And busting myths as Jules has talked about.
Yeah, I think what it's important is when you look at delivery and you're trying to educate colleagues is use different delivery methods. Colleagues all learn in different ways. So some are happy to go through a microsite. It's quite intuitive. You click on buttons. You can take yourself straight to the question that you may have. Others want something sort of more face-to-face. So we put on webinars around the world where we go through the plan in each country and how it works. What we did this year was we recruited local champions to help us with those, to give those presentations a local flavour, and for those champions to explain why they had joined the plan. It made it much more personal in each country, and they did a fantastic job for us in bringing the plan to life for their colleagues in their country.
Yeah, and I think, you know, in terms of the success story that Sage have had with Save and Share has been absolutely amazing, as the audience can see on the screen now. So, Jules, another element was clearly the maturity, which we mentioned right at the start. So you had a lot of colleagues who were coming into perhaps capital gains tax, and as we all know, the capital gains tax, you know, changes have been happening quite frequently, and we've had the budget as well. So there's a lot for Sage colleagues to really bear in mind. Was there anything specific that you did around the maturity this year?
Yes. We start planning the maturity whilst we're planning the launch. You know, sort of like it isn't a case of stop and start. So we looked at the maturity and we thought, what do we want to get across? Again, we use our microsite, we use webinars to educate people. But in the UK, we thought we had a specific challenge this year. It had sort of started last year because the changes in the CGT allowance, unprecedented changes. I mean, it halved the year before, and it's now down half again this year. And we really wanted to ensure that colleagues understood what they needed to do, what their obligations were. This isn't PAYE tax. The company isn't going to take care of it for you. This is something you're going to have to do yourself. A lot of the colleagues who join our Save and Share plan in the UK maybe don't even fill out tax returns. They don't have a reason to. Everything goes through PAYE. So this was all new territory. And as Sarah mentioned earlier, our share price had increased, which was fantastic news. These guys were instead of making £1 or £2 a share, which they had been year on year, they were going to be, they got a gain of over £5. So that could take a number of them. You know, I think it was about 80% of the maturity. If they sold all their shares, we're going to have a capital gains tax liability. So it was important that they understood what it was, how it worked, and what they needed to do. Capital gains is very complicated, and a number of our colleagues keep their shares. So they wouldn't just have to think about this maturity when they were calculating their capital gains. They would have to look at the acquisition price of the shares that they were already holding as well to come up with an average. It's called share pooling. That's about as much as I know.
Are you going to explain that, Jules?
No, that's about as much as I know. And we soon realised we needed some help to do this, you know, sort of like we couldn't just do our usual webinar with our tax team, even though they're very good. We needed outside help. So we brought in Wealth at Work, financial, you know, sort of education in the workplace specialists, and said, look, you know, we don't want our plan, our really successful maturity, to become a disaster when everyone's fined by the taxman. So we put an education programme together with them. We gave people lots of notice that we were going to be running these webinars, that they should attend, you know, that CGT was a big thing and it did apply to them. It could apply to them, and that there were ways that they could mitigate it, but they needed to know how to report it and they needed to know how to pay it.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the fact that you had 93% of those who attended the webinars that you ran actually took a financial action. So that might be, and for those of you in the room who know about things like transferring to spouse, etc., we can't get into all of the details around that, but I think, you know, that was a really positive outcome for the maturity.
It was. We also held, you know, sort of, you know, come and join us for a coffee and a cake, you know, sort of find out more. You know, I've got a team of 2, so we're not a massive team, but one's in Bristol, one's in Newcastle. So we tried to just sort of put the message across, you know, come and find out about the maturity. This is really important. And it created a lot of buzz. There was a lot of excitement about this year's maturity. And we had some really great feedback about the webinars that, you know, we had put on. In fact, some said, oh, so much better than the year before, which was a bit hurtful, but fully understandable under the circumstances.
I think you make a really good point about kind of running and launching these kind of new reward programs. You put your heart and soul into them, and the company spends a lot of money investing in running the program itself. And actually, you need to make sure that you keep that positive vibe across your colleague population, actually, and when people are worried and concerned, financial issues and financial things can make you much more unsettled. So actually, by giving you have to give more support, don't you? And you have to,
Definitely. I think you know, sort of like as equity geeks, as I call our community, you know, we're passionate about what we do. We really believe in what we do. We believe in wealth creation for our colleagues, and this is you know, having a plan like this is a great way to do it. But you can't stop the education. You can't stop the engagement. You can't think, right, well, we've got a microsite, we've done this, that's it, we don't need to do any more. And the big part of a save and share plan, because it has this 3-year savings period, is the end of the journey is as important as the beginning. So don't put all your budget, your funds, your energy into launching the plan without then celebrating the success. Or sometimes it's not a success. The share price can go down, and you've got to explain that as well and what that means for them. So, you know, for me, the end of the journey is as important as the beginning. And even beyond, you know, helping colleagues understand what it is to be a shareholder, how they vote their shares, how they receive dividends. It's an ongoing education message, and you need to collaborate with other areas of your organisation, your comms, your payroll, your brand team, your company secretariat team. So it is a real global effort within an organisation, but it's your equity team that drive the enthusiasm and the passion to get all those people to come on board with you.
I think you're absolutely right, and it certainly has been a great collaboration in terms of communications with Jane and the team, yourselves. And I think one thing, I know Jake's going to tell us to be quiet in 1 minute, but I do think one thing that was very dear to everybody's hearts was the passion within Sage to make sure that colleagues were 2 clicks away from being able to make a choice, whichever, you know, whether it was through the communications, whether it was through the education. So 2 clicks, because we all know how difficult sometimes it is to navigate, you know, platforms, etc. And I just think that, you know, Sage, you know, that really helped colleagues be able to make those informed decisions.
Yeah.
Very quickly, Jake, can I just hand back to Jules just to really, really quickly run through those key takeaways in a few seconds.
Which of those?
Which one would you say was the most important, Jules?
Oh, God, it would have to be all of them. I wrote them. Yeah? How do you want me to pick one? But I'd say what I've just said, focus on both the ends of your journey. And if you're, you know, we smashed our target. We took our overall participation up to 36% from 31%. That's a 5% increase. We doubled it in countries that had low participation. So use your colleagues, right? Colleagues like to learn from colleagues. So recruit them, recruit your army. From the maturity perspective, make sure that your plan is going to continue to be a success. Don't think, well, they knew what it was about 3 years ago. They're going to remember everything, because they're not. And above all, treat your plan as a new plan every year. You know, right? That don't just put it in once and be done with it. So,
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you very much.